Hey, it's editing Mila here. I hope we're doing well. I just want to let you know, small little claim, little thing. Everything I talk about here, even though I'm talking about copywriting, everything I talk about, whether it's a phrase or something, is in the realm of fair use. End of story. Period. Funny that I have to do that for a cop video all about copywriting and IP.
I pushed the glasses up against my nose as I felt my love and hatred for my mother fester in my messy bun, which also held a secret donut just in case I got hungry. Harry Styles pushed himself forward and said, YYN, so nice to meet you. I promise I will make these 365 days in my secret underground castle as enjoyable as they possibly can. And I said, okay, but I have a list of demands, I say, as I am already in his car. And then he says, and everything you could ever want, I can give you, and more. All I knew was that I was leaving a life of poverty and crime. But at what cost? Merch is the monster that holds our retirement hostage. Even in this economy, we can't help but feed the gremlin in us that wants that heated rivals jersey or those Mickey Mouse ears. But what if I told you that merch is a risky business? Not for the consumers, fans, but the other fans that choose to spread the joy of free marketing for corporations that might already have a file on them. This is episode 2 of Fictitiously Plagiarized, a Substack subscriber exclusive series about the fast-paced retelling of fan fiction history and its controversial rise to publishing. And thank you so much as well for being a paid sub. In today's episode, we will take a fast-paced dive into copywriting, trademarks, and what is at stake for selling bootleg merch for fandoms, celebrities, and artists that maybe don't want the free marketing. First and foremost, let's get into the difference between copywriting and trademarking. According to Cornell law, copyright protects original creative work like art, books, music, etc., while trademark protects source identifiers, like something that helps people identify where said art has came from. Think logos, brand names, slogans, websites. And that's all just to prevent consumer confusion at the same time. Now, what type of confusion do big brands want to protect us from? Maybe brands don't want others to think that they are legally or business-wise associated with a daycare. I'm referring to the 1989 Disney daycare incident, where Disney famously forced 3 Florida daycare centers to remove murals of Mickey Mouse and Goofy, arguing that allowing unauthorized character usage was weakening their trademark, even if it wasn't necessarily harmful to their, brand. Does that make Disney sound like a supervillain to me? In my opinion, just a little bit. But I bet there's a reason why. When it comes to trademark, the philosophy is that you cannot pick or choose who you prosecute. You cannot pick and choose your battles. That ruins the point of a trademark. If you let one thing slide, what's to say that that doesn't legally obligate you to allow others to slide as well? In the end, it's to protect you. If you are fully adamant that no licensed material can be used, no matter for what or for who, it makes it easier to reinforce when bigger trademark issues come at risk. Keeping in mind also 2 extra important details between trademarking and copywriting. Copywriting is automatic. You write it, you think it, you even publish it first, etc. It's yours. That's it. Trademarking is bureaucracy. You have to go to the government and you have to file those patents yourself. But copyright is yours legally by heart, by soul. It is your destiny. Fans, power, and controversy. However, this becomes controversial when we have artists and cultural leaders like Taylor Swift who are known for advocating for healthy and passionate communities. Yet, in 2015, Swifties' legal team sent cease and desist letters to Etsy sellers using trademark lyrics like, "This sick beat," or "Party like it's 1989" on handmade items. Now, why would Taylor Swift's team really do that? And what does that mean? Does that mean Taylor Swift hates her fans? Absolutely not. I'm a bona fide Swiftie. I love Taylor Swift with all my heart. She is iconic. And I bet it's a love-hate relationship where she really doesn't want to do that, but knows that she kind of has to, or at least maybe isn't fully aware of it happening, blissfully unaware by choice. Overall, basically just making sure that she doesn't have to carry that ethical responsibility of knowing that she is allowing her team to do that, when really they probably have to. Although seeming very villainous and predatory to young and underfunded creators, this exists because if you let one persona slide, it can be an argument in court later for other things. It's just a way to be fair. But what does this have to do with the fan economy? How does this fuel the compromise the fan economy has? According to Research and Markets 2024 Global Fan Engagement Marketing Analysis, the fandom-based economy is valued at $8.08 billion annually worldwide, driven by merchandise, digital content, and community-driven platforms like Patreon. In the end, there is a market for merch, and it might be worth it potentially at the cost of getting caught red-handed. Some fandoms have protective IPs, and some of them won't care. But with the fast pace of fandoms today and how TikTok has changed the way we consume and buy and look at media, it's hard for smaller creators and smaller business owners to keep up. That's why it is important to know that merch releasing very fast during a cultural moment is often probably made in a sweatshop somewhere, but potentially also stolen work produced overseas. Use your critical thinking skills, use your critical thinking caps, put them on. Sometimes fandom merch doesn't always support a small creator. Sometimes it just supports another shady organization. This brings us back to trademarks. Disney, Taylor Swift, and J.K. Rowling always can't decipher a one-person shop from a large illegal operation that's organized. Legally, they have to treat them the same. That doesn't change the fact that trademark bullying is actually a thing, and we'll get into the reason why this all relates to fan fiction in a moment. This proves that community-based fandom markets can generate huge profit margins, but they also can create risks. There is something called a trademark bully. The USPTO, United States Patent and Trademark Office, a federal agency under the Department of Commerce. Its job is to grant patents and register trademarks to safeguard intellectual property and promote innovation, while also helping prevent monopolies over time, which I'll get into a little later. According to academic Irina Monta, the USPTO has begun cracking down on trademark bullies, corporations that use their wealth to harass small businesses beyond what the law reasonably allows. This comes from the Fordham Intellectual Property Media and Entertainment Law Journal in 2012. Trademark bullying is anti-competitive. Large owners sometimes use enforcement not to protect, but to stifle competitors who can't afford long legal battles. Worse, the system offers very few sanctions if a bully never actually even files a suit to begin with, only threats. Monta proposes structural reform where the PTO could issue preliminary validating assessments. If claims are weak, it could discourage unnecessary legal threats. But then, when does the law knock on your door? If someone emails you threatening trademark or lawsuit, it's not always because you did something wrong. Sometimes they're just being a bully. The world of trademark is run by predators, armed with cease and desist.
It's editing me again. I know, and I switched locations. I want to let you know something extra important about trademark bullies that I forgot to put in. And that is really, in the end, it's anti-competition. And that's why it's cracking down on it. It's to prevent competition. So sometimes, in my opinion, if you are a small creator, you're creating art, etc., and you're getting trademark infringement from, say, another creator or something in like that, or a cease and desist, even if it's just a threat, it's because they see you as a creative threat. Take that as you will. It just means you're a powerhouse, baby girl, if we want to be delusional.
Most creators can't afford $50K in legal fees and are forced to settle or delete said content. Trademark dilution is an actual fear corporates believe they have. Corporations believe that if they don't fight the small cases, they will lose right to the big ones. This foggy transition takes us from fan appreciation to a corporate asset management. And yes, it is a PR thing. As someone with a background in marketing and PR, I confidently believe that when it's obviously, say, something harmless, like a child, a nonprofit, etc., the ethical move, I think, that is also good for business is to do a partnership, offer resources, partial credit, and maybe even a job if they're older. This is in the sense if they are a kid. If not, if it's innocent enough, I think that's good PR because you get the ability to control your copyright, but you also don't look like a massive dick. But then we have platforms like Etsy and Redbubble that deal with complicity. And what does that actually put at stake for them and for creators and even maybe for indie authors? Fandom business has a whack-a-mole problem. Basically, they see it, they whack it, another one pops up. Pew, pew, pew. Etsy sellers knowingly infringe, calculating profits before takedown and realizing that it is indeed worth it. Etsy's transparency report, the fact that we need a transparency report from corporations, shows that millions of listings are removed annually due to DMCA notices, mostly from Disney and Nintendo, which are the primary predators in that situation. Platforms like Etsy and Redbubble do profit from the traffic and basically will enable this said infringement. Now, a little side note, I'm fully aware that Disney has always been known for being hard on their copyright, and they did just lose their trademark and their protective qualities on Steamboat Willie. I was on a live stream today discussing about Fictitiously Plagiarized, and I had to clarify Mickey Mouse is not public domain, but Steamboat Willie is. That and Nintendo is notoriously very judicious and very studious when it comes to their IP. Litigious. Basically, Disney is known for empty threats, while Nintendo is very litigious in nature and loves doing those lawsuits. But what does that have to do with fan fiction? What does that have to do with fan fiction at all? It's all about filing off the serial numbers. This groundwork explains how legally sensitive fan fiction is and what it must go through to become publishable. With platforms like Patreon and Ko-Fi, fans can fund creatives without directly paying for the infringement work. And what does it mean to then file off these said serial numbers? When we talk about filing the serial numbers off, we're referring to stripping copyrighted elements to make fan fiction legally original in nature. And I'd like to argue that if it came from your hands, your blood, your sweat, your tears, it's partially yours. If you were typing that on your computer and you put in the work, then it is kind of, in a sense, your work at the same time. Legally, you cannot sell Star Wars fan fiction on Amazon, so a transition in the end must fully occur. Also, many readers are fandom blind, which basically means turning a fan fiction into a novel can broaden its audience while also retaining a built-in fandom marketing, which is sometimes controversial and can also be the bane of this author's existence. Names must change, worlds rebuilt, logic recreated. Changing Kylo to Adam Carlson. It might be cheeky, but still risky. Structures like the Hunger Games tournaments must be fundamentally altered. We see this with a legal precedent with the Harry Potter lexicon trial in 2008, showing that every reference work can be even infringement, even if you are, say, making an encyclopedia on behalf of the Harry Potter universe. That can be infringement if the copy is too much, say, like the author's vivid descriptions, unique phrases, and stylistic cadences. Basically, a lot is at stake if you are adapting a fan fiction into a original work for publishing. The best transitions keep emotional core and the tropes, but rebuilding the skeleton. Alternate universe fics really help with that. So if you originally wrote a fan fiction that took place in an alternate universe, then you'll have an easier time. Whether it takes place at a college like Stanford University, ranches, prep schools or boy bands. Ali Hazelwood's The Love Hypothesis successfully does that by keeping these really fun tropes while changing just enough and keeping something cheeky like little cute Easter eggs like Adam Carlson instead of Adam Driver, who is the actor who played Kylo Ren. But there is a plagiarism trap. Missing one unique phrase, a lawsuit will follow, especially if marketed as fiction, and especially if marketed previously as fanfiction allows for legal scrutiny. So if you end up marketing something as previously fanfiction, you get two things. You get to unlock the base that loves the fandom, loves your fanfiction, that got a really good boost on AO3 or Wattpad, that got all that attention. But then you are also at risk because now you're under scrutiny. Because what's not to say that that lawyer is going to try and read that book and figure out if you did infringement. It puts you under scrutiny, especially if you're maybe giving free advertising to an author that maybe does not deserve the free advertising. Or maybe even better yet, to understand what would happen if perhaps you weren't able to do it for free. Maybe the author wants to negotiate a commission. Maybe you don't get the full rights to your work anymore. Those are all the things that are at risk if you market it as previously fan fiction. That is the plagiarism trap we must be aware of. Large fan bases act as beta testers, creating day one sales spikes publishers love. But fics and fan fictions fail when they rely too heavily on that reader nostalgia and those bare bones. Let's expand on filing off the serial numbers, a semi-common term that refers to the process of stripping a piece of fanfiction of its copyrighted elements, making it legally original work. If fanfiction, no matter what, the IP belongs to that corporation. Sometimes an author doesn't even get the full legal ownership over their copyrightable material or their world. Legally, you cannot monetize that Star Wars fanfiction on an Amazon Direct Kindle publishing. As an example, there's a transition that must happen in order for it to be legally profitable and potentially monetizable. Many readers are fandom blind, as I've said previously, which basically means that you have potentially two different built-in audiences, which instills a lot of controversy, especially with these marketing tactics that lead to discourse in book talk and bookstagram. Because what's not to say that you are potentially taking opportunities away from authors of their original work that started from scratch. Now we have publishers that are purposely scouring Wattpad, finding something that could potentially make them money. It's potentially just less risky. It could even be, in some cases, just business. But what has to change? Question mark. First, one must change names and rebuild the law of the world and replace key identifiers that can basically be easily taken off. Although cheeky, can potentially hint at its roots, making readers feel very smart because they know a little bit of the origins. Instead of bending in Avatar or Hunger Games tournaments, the structures in those cases must change fundamentally, especially with magic systems. You will, and I quote, have to rewrite and make your own magic system. End of story. That's just how it is. You must fundamentally alter these things in order to potentially avoid copyright, although things kind of go under the radar, as we've said before, as in with the J.K. Rowling lexicon court case. So there's never really a guarantee. Have to build your characters originally from the ground up. Then you must wonder, what happens if you say make a Harry Potter reference in your novel, and it's a romance novel, and you're just telling a story, and it happens to be that Harry Potter is a book series within that story, graining your story deeper within reality. What does that mean if you tell a joke? Does that mean these characters exist in a non-fictional fictional space? They aren't using the original creator's specific vivid descriptions or unique phrases. Even if the names are changed, there even says that writing styles and cadences are fully copyrightable, which they can be, arguably. You will have to argue for it, which is massive. And traditional publishers would be willing to take the risk on them because it's a business. perhaps even original work themselves, which we'll get into the controversy of that soon in another episode, because we need to discuss who gets hurt in the process. Authors who start from scratch, big corporations, etc. Is there room in this town for the both of us? Are we taking chances away from authors that are doing their original work? The only time a fan fiction can fail as a standalone original novel is when it relies too heavily on the reader's existing love for the setting. Without the crutch of the famous world, the prose sometimes might feel thin, and you can tell that it screams bare bones, skeleton. Which goes back into the thought that, do you want to take the risk and market your book as previously fan fiction, or would you rather roll it under the rug? This was episode 2 of Fictitiously Plagiarized. Thank you to all of my paid subs, and I hope to see you in this month's live research lecture. Please feel free to rate the podcast, and especially check in for the next episode this year in early February, all about authors like Anne Rice that hate fanfiction and others like Rainbow Rowell that love it, and why. We ask in this series, who gets hurt by this pipeline, and what's at stake for emerging authors? And will this trend potentially lead to the collapse of the publishing industry? This is Fictitiously Plagiarized, a fast-paced retelling of the history and culture phenomenon of online fan fiction and its pipeline to publishing and profit. We don't just talk about IP, we talk about art, we talk about business, and we talk about all the other juicy stuff. Through an academic communications and media studies perspective, we are able to dive deep in not just the language, the linguistics, the culture, but also the controversies with Fictitiously Plagiarized. And we also basically talk about my thesis, like how fanfiction went from anti-capitalistic corporate interest, anti-institutional, to now being a fast-paced railroad pipeline to publishing and profit. But at what cost? See you guys in episode 3, all about authors that love to hate fanfiction and why. So if you want to explore who actually gets hurt in the process when fanfiction becomes publishable, then check out episode 3 in early February. And thank you for being a paid sub at the Desktop Vanity Substack, all about beauty, ambition, pop culture, and feminist media studies. Toodaloo. Mwah.